All right, 9 o'clock, actually a little after Tuesday, January 20th. It's our Zoning and Land Committee for Ashland County, Wisconsin. Number one on the agenda, call to order. We'll do a roll call.
Blake Ellefson,
Here.
Gary Eater,
Here.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Jim Schultz,
Here.
and Paul Wilharm. Is Paul Wilharm online? All right, thank you.
All right, moving along. Number two, public comments. Do we have anyone online or in for public comments? Pablo, you want to we have some public comments here and go ahead.
So I'm Paul Beachy, or Pablo as I'm known, and I'm the one here with interest in the CCA treating plant. And I don't know what all I should say about it. It's just an opportunity seems to be opening up for me there down in the Marengo area. And so I'm looking into it, and I found out the first thing I have to do is get clearance from the county. And so I'd like to do that. Just just a few statements about what I want to do is take raw red pine posts, peel them, and then they're not rot resistant, and so they need a treatment, a preservative, and that's what I want to do. Have a small facility that I can pressure treat them. It's called, and as I understand it, it's chemical. It's a poison. There's ratings and stuff. I have a safety and data sheet here. As I understand it, there's not runoff, anything like that. It's all contained within a building. It all happens inside a building. You put it in the pressure chamber, you treat it, then it has to get vacuum to it to dry it off again. You pull it out, then you set it still inside the building. You have to have a pad that if there's anything dripping off of it, it gets recycled back in. It has to be there for a period of time till it's dry, till it goes out. I don't know this. I've heard that the only way for this chemical to be released from the wood is through burning. So, you think of cattle, you think of stacking it on a yard. As I understand it, it doesn't come off. I don't have any data on that. It's just what they've told me. So from my limited understanding, it doesn't seem, it's a poison, it's a chemical, whatever you want to call it. But as I understand it, it's not a super dangerous process. Where I'm burning chemical or something, putting chemical polluted smoke into the air, anything like that. It's all contained within a building. Any chemical runoff gets recycled back in, reused, and all of that. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to talk about it more.
This is public comment, so we cannot respond during public comment to what you said, but there is an agenda item where we can have a conversation.
So because it's public comment, we'll just appreciate you coming and talking about it, but there won't be any back and forth at this point. Thank you. Are there any other online public comments? It sounds like we'll make one more pass, give everyone in the building as well as online an opportunity. Okay, moving on. Approval of the agenda, number 3. Does anyone want to make a motion?
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve.
Jim will second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, moving along. Approval of the minutes. Going back a ways on this one, I believe, right? What was the minutes from?
November 18th.
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to put it on the floor, but I also have a question
Okay,
after a second.
he's made a motion.
I'll second it.
Gary second. All right.
So Mike, if Jen, you're here, so in that first paragraph, if we go back up to the first one, it's regarding the real estate agent. Just so the minutes reflect where we're at. At the last meeting, we talked about compensation for a realtor. Some of the parcels, let's say they're 80,000, he can clearly get his 6% and, come out more than 3,000. 3,000 was his minimum commission. But then we had parcels where we wanted to provide, I believe initially, at least $1,000 minimum to that. But then there's this gap in there. I didn't think about it at the time, but there's this gap in there where, and we don't want the county to have to pay 3,000 to sell a parcel that's worth, say, $800, nor do we want to pay 3,000 to sell a parcel that's worth 2,000. So the idea was that on parcels that were 6% was less than 1,000, we would give them 1,000. Parcels where 6% would give them more than 1,000, we would give them 6%, and whatever that amount was that was more than 1,000, up to that 3,000 for a minimum commission. That was his normal minimum commission. If there was money available from the proceeds after county expenses on that. Does that, this, it says 6,000 or 6% or 3,000, but there's going to be cases where that commission, because a property is worth, something, but not a lot, that 6% would be more than 1,000, but it wouldn't be up to 3,000.
Okay,
So any parcel in that gap, we were going to give them the greater of, from 1,000 to 3,000, the greater of the 6% or the 1,000. So
okay,
let's say the 6% came out to $2,000. We would give them the $2,000 as opposed to the 1,000, but we wouldn't give them the 3,000 because what we're left with after the sale doesn't get us to recovering all of our costs.
okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'll have to go back and listen to the meeting again. I also thought it was like what the minutes have, where instead of the 6% or 1,000, whichever was greater, that we were bumping it up to 6% or 3,000, whichever was greater. But yeah, we can,
But my intent was, and there's this gap, I didn't want to go to 3,000 on every parcel, because 1,000 was the minimum. If 6% is more than 3,000, he gets the 6%.
Mhm.
But in those cases where 6% is something more than 1,000 but less than 3,000, he would get whatever that falls between the 1,000 and 3,000.
okay,
But I didn't want to go up to 3,000. Otherwise, we're effectively just moving the minimum up to 3,000,
okay,
which wasn't the intent.
okay. Okay, I
And
understand.
if you wanted to send me an update on that, I could look at it to see if it makes sense to me and we're on the same page and,
Okay, okay, I can take a look at that.
And Dan,
Would it be acceptable if she sent you an update of what she's planning and then the committee could take that up again at the next
Yes.
meeting?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. There's some confusion, but I think we all agree in concept is that we want Tony to be compensated more than 1,000 when the property sale value is higher. And he should be compensated up to 3,000 every time that we make a sale where we're netting above and beyond, so that the county, if we get made whole, Tony should get up to 3,000 if there's value in it. Obviously, if the property's not valuable, that's not gonna happen. We understand that. So I agree with what you're saying and simplifying it. So, because we really want Tony to just get the properties back into the public sold. Yeah.
Could we possibly change the wording to say, depending on the property's assessed value, the realtor rate would be this or this or this or this?
Well, it's all gonna become, it's hard to know what the assessed value, because that doesn't always equal what the sale price will ultimately come out at. We don't, some of these properties are very low value, which is why we're struggling, is we want Tony to emphasize, hey, we want you to sell this. he's going to work harder on the more valuable properties because he's going to get compensated more. But we also want to put a minimum in of 1,000 so that he works just as hard on those minimal properties. Go ahead, Ben.
So there's three cases how this falls into, is I think we could make a chart or a table so that everybody could then look at it and say, okay, this particular case falls into this one of these three, and therefore it's a guideline for everybody to see and follow. So there'll be a paragraph to explain that, and then, and the amounts in there would be after what the county has remaining after expenses. Because basically what we're trying to do is, if there's money left after a sale, instead of giving it to the owner who didn't pay their taxes, that we compensate the realtor to his minimum normal commission, because we have the ability to do that. I'm also bearing in mind long-term that, you know, the current realtors, he's somewhere into his 60s, if not well into his 60s, and we want another realtor someday to be willing to take this on too, so, yeah, so that'd be fine if I did that with Jen.
Yeah, I'll work on wording that or making a table and we'll do that.
So we had a motion and a second and some comments. I think that clarifies what we're going to do there. I guess we'll vote on this then. All those in favor of accepting the minutes from the November 18th meeting
With the proposed
with the
changes.
proposed changes that we're going to work through with Jen?
I'll say aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. We've accepted the agenda with those proposed changes. All right. Moving along. So now we're at number 5, zoning discussion action items. Right up to pressure treatment facility discussion. Why don't you come back on up here for question?
Yeah, George would say, I'm County Board Supervisor. I'm not a member of this committee, but I'm attending today for some other reasons. I serve on Health and Human Services, so I'd just like to suggest, without becoming too bureaucratic, that you just check in with those folks down on San Bernardino Avenue about the safety of workers, my
Mhm.
primary concern.
You're wondering if I did check in with them?
I'm just suggesting that you do if you haven't.
Oh, yeah. Mm. Yeah, I want to check into all safety, whatever, and as I understand it, if I get clearing from the county, then I have to get clearing from the DNR, and there's, I'm not sure, like 4 different permits I have to get, and it's got to all be done right. And I'm interested in, if I can't do it right, I don't want to do it. I mean, I can't do it, obviously. And so from what I understand, safety, there's got to be lots of safety stuff in place.
So today you're doing this in Michigan with outsourcing, right?
Mhm.
And what you're saying is now you'd be resourcing this back to this county in this building. Is there a building that you have?
No,
So
I
you,
have to build, you have to start with totally new concrete and everything.
okay.
So yeah, I just want to bring it all to here, to my place.
And you have a real estate location picked out?
I do. If I can get it all, you know, if I can get permits and all of that.
Which township are you? Is it White River?
It would be White River, yes.
And you've talked to them about any of this stuff? Or are you starting at the county?
I started talking to them, then I discovered I have to get clearance here
Yeah.
too, from the county. And so now, and then I'll go back to the township and work with the permits. I just got a offline or whatever, I got a list of things you need to do this particular thing, and they told me you have to start with getting county clearance.
So today then, are we taking up an item to allow this forward or are we in discussion points at this point, Dan?
Just discussion.
Pat?
So Paul, I grew up on a dairy farm, and
Mhm.
we've used posts like this for many years. So I'm familiar with this. So I understand what's in them and some of what can concern people. I've pulled posts over the years, and last year I pulled another 16 and gave them away, partly because someone else could use them. But I'm also aware that I would rather someone use them than leave them decomposed on my property. So I've got a number of questions or comments, if I could run through these things. So I appreciate that you are coming here and having this conversation with us. That's good, I think, for everybody, because this is going to be a learning experience thing, I think, for us in terms of what this involves and what our responsibilities are to work with you and help you where we can, but also to understand where we do and don't have involvement with this, or a vote or a choice, and what's permitted and that sort of stuff. So it's going to be a process for us to go through too. So it's good to do this on the front end. One of the things that from reading online here, and this is from the Department of Health Services in Wisconsin, you're proposing to do the chromated copper arsenate, but then it also says the ammonia copper quat are two commonly used water-based treatments, and that the ACQ, the ammonia copper quat, is newer, less toxic, that has gained popularity in recent years. I'm just curious, are you familiar with that one? I'm not. That was new to me.
No, not really. The reason I'd like to do CCA is because it's very widely recognized as something that works. And so also some of the people I want to sell with, which do government fences, like on the highway, they have to have CCA because it's been proved. And some of this newer stuff is still, that the one you mentioned there, I'm not sure if is the other one that I'm familiar with, but it's only been used for like 10 years. Well, we want our posts to last minimum of 20 years, hopefully 30 or 40 years. And so they've only had it out for 10 years. So the one customer that I've talked with that would like to buy from me, he has to have CCA. So I decided, well, I might as well just go for CCA then, because that's the tried and proven one.
Yeah, so the other one, it's new to me, but just because you're early in the process, it might be one that you want to research, just so you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
And it's news to me. I'm familiar with what you
Yeah.
are talking about. One of the questions I have is, you proposed 60,000 posts for one customer if you could get enough trees. A bit over a year ago, I talked to Dan Granger, who's at the sawmill in Sanborn, and if I understood him right, apparently some years back, there was a lot of planting of red pine in our kind of proverbial neck of the woods. If I understood him right, that red pine is probably, there's not new red pine being planted to replace what's out there, was my understanding. So if you go forward with this, you're going to want a supply of red pine. And then we've got some in the area now, but to me, it sounds like, from what I know, we're not planting enough to keep up with an ongoing demand to keep your business and at least the red pine part of the sawmill in Sanborn going. So if you do go forward with this, it's good for us to know that, so that just from a tree planting standpoint, as a county, we know this. I would suggest talking to the county forester, Chris Hoffman, because if he knows there's a demand for red pine, that would be good for the forestry committee to know, but also for private landowners. The Wisconsin DNR has a grant program where people can get some funding to plant trees. I've gotten those grants a couple of times. There's a forester in Washburn that I've been working with. They have a tree planter there that people can borrow. So long-term, you want a supply of red pine going forward with this. I would also suggest talking to the Land and Water Conservation Department head, Mary Jo Gingrich, about this, to see if she has concerns or suggestions.
What was that name?
Mary Jo Gingrich, Gingras, because she's, Land and Water Conservation, she's certainly gonna, want to be familiar with this project too. At times with farming operations, they can get some funding to help protect waterways and things like that. I don't know for a business if they have access to funding and stuff that might help you design this so that it meets all of the standards the state wants, but also locally everything that we might like, but don't have any way of compelling you to do, that little bit extra or something. She might be able to provide some suggestions or sources of funding to help with some of that. So.
Just a quick question, a clarification. Is this only fence posting, or is this also poles, like utility poles?
At this point, I just want to do fence posts.
Thanks.
So you said that you use a vacuum process to help dry them, so you lower the pressure, they'll dry out faster. And then you're storing them in the building for a period of time. But there's I can send you this link or send it to Bruce if he reminds me, because I'm gonna forget. But when I did Google this topic with Wisconsin Department of Health Services, had a page or two on treated wood process. And there's one sentence here that says, however, recent studies show that rainwater can wash CCA out of the wood and carry it into the soil. Additionally, a thin residue coating of CCA was found to exist on the wood surface. This residue can easily be picked up by hands and food items, resulting in exposure. So I'm not sure, that rainwater bit, I mean, obviously we stick fence posts and make fence lines and they get exposed to water. But on site, because you'd have so many, up to 100,000 a year, there would, I think the concern would be a concentration above the background arsenic that's often found in soil. To make sure that they stayed in dry storage, either in a building or covered somehow. I think that's going to be a concern that people are going to ask about.
Yeah, and I would like to store them like in a hoop building or something, so they're not getting rained on all the time.
Yeah, that would be good.
And it was interesting to hear about the red pine. I want to pursue that, the market for it, because I've been hearing, I got worried about that. What if there's no red pine to cut after a while? So I did talk to one logger down by Hayward, and his thought on it was that, of course, this is just right now. He said there'll be all the red pine you want, because I can basically only use what's called the first thinning. So they plant these trees, and then in about, I don't know, 10 years maybe, they have to cut out every third row, I believe it is. And they're struggling to have anywhere to go with that, because it's pulp size, basically. The pulp mills don't pay that much, and they're a long ways away. Another logger told me that these sales aren't even getting sold. Nobody's buying them because there's not enough demand for them. And so that's gonna, if there's never any demand for them, eventually it's gonna peter out.
Yeah, they call that the release cut, when they cut some of them so the others can grow further. So by
Right.
having them more dense, there's not branches or as many branches on the lower part, so they do that release cut. I did a forest adaptation class online last winter, and so one of the things that comes to mind on that now is a generation ago or so, foresters, in a bit more, they really had this, cut whatever's there and plant red pine, grows fast and there was a market. But now they're transitioning away from that, in part because with climate change, they're realizing red pine on a lot of soils isn't ideal, depending on moisture levels, type of soil, et cetera. So there's less red pine being planted now than there used to be. And so you'd have to keep up, with the demand on that. But there's also, I don't know if you know this one, south of Hayward somewhere, it's like 5-10 miles south, there's somebody that seems to use those posts also for making
Howard.
fence posts, but I don't think they're treating them. But someone down there has a demand for them too. So,
there's always this discussion around what's coming and what loggers want or what mills want. And right now, red pine is not wanted. In the South, right now, they're trying to figure out what are they going to do with all this wood that's been planted for many years. And now they're trying to come up with solutions for fuel or whatnot. And so there's this Johnson's down in Hayward that's one of 3 finalists who are talking about bringing a massive biofuel.
Biochar.
And that, I don't want to say would directly compete, but those are the type of logs that they're looking to take. They want the first cut, the stuff that the loggers really don't want. And so I'm not saying you're going to be in competition, because that still hasn't flushed itself out. But yeah, red pine is not something people want. The value's crashed. And so for you to get it, it's almost like a benefit to everybody, because now you're utilizing something. But just in the back of your mind, there are some things at the state level they're trying to work through in the market. And if that were to come to fruition, that would put a significant amount of pressure on the type of wood you're looking for.
And that,
Go ahead.
Yeah, just building on that, from my reading of the article in the Daily Press, I'm not sure that red pine or pine of any kind was the type of woods they're looking for, the aviation fuels. But Blake's right, you really need to look and see whether or not it is. But it might not be one of the competing woods. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. So the red pine might not be one of the woods that they want for biofuel. You just really need to check it out one way or the other. Sorry.
So I was hearing about that biochar thing down by Johnson Timber, and I hope I can get started before they do, because I can't compete with them. But I'm not sure. I think they might be doing more like hardwood, but I'm not sure about that. But it is more, all they need is junk. I mean, like the crooked and stuff, they don't need, it's not saw lumber. So if they can use red pine, it's definitely gonna be competition with me.
Paul, does this have to be red pine or can jack pine work?
I think jack pine can work too,
Because we got all kinds of jack pine west of here.
as long as you can. Red pine, as I understand it, is one of the best woods to treat because of the high sugar content. The chemical binds to it really well. Things like spruce, it doesn't, and aspen, it doesn't, and even hardwoods, it doesn't, you can't get it to bind, to stick as good.
You know, if the aviation biofuels does go in, that would be a market for your slash
Mhm.
byproduct.
So talk to the county foresters, ask them Bayfield County, Iron County, Douglas County, and then if you do get going and you look at other demand, but I think so much of this red pine, the big takeaway would be this red pine stock is on the older side. And there doesn't seem, from what I know, as much interest in replanting red
Mhm.
pine, and red pine does not regenerate on its own very well when it's cut. So there's got to be a plan for planting. So some of these places where people have been having red pine cut, if it's not really being planted back to red pine and they know there's a demand, then there's the forestry grant program through the DNR. I can connect you with a forester I worked with. You know, some of these people might want to apply for grant money to get some red pine, replanted so that you have that next generation, of
Mhm.
pine coming in. The other thing I would suggest that you do is you talk to Bruce. We've been talking on zoning and finance committee about, what we can do to, help economic development. And one of the things we look at is zoning. We don't zone the city of Ashland and other places that are of no zoning, but the county in general, trying to make it work better for people. So if you are going to build a building and potentially at some point think about building a house, you could talk to Bruce about, because we've been having this conversation, could you put in a shared driveway, a shared well, a shared septic system for both the business and a residence there? And then if it's multiple residents, eventually, they could be smaller parcels instead of, larger
Mhm.
parcels. He could go through that. So you might kind of think about a larger vision of what works with you, and Bruce could
Mhm.
talk about trying to make that work better than, as well
Yeah,
as
that's
we
a good
can.
idea. Mhm.
Well, we have talked this through. I'm really glad you're here. Again, he brought up the economic development side. So as a county, I'm cautiously optimistic that we can get behind this project. Obviously, you have a significant amount of work with the DNR. And, but, from a county, I think we're going to ask questions, but we'll be supportive as you go through this process, and go ahead.
So I'll just mention DATCAP is the one who regulates chemicals in Wisconsin. So what Paul's gonna find out as he digs into this, he's gonna have to get certified to use a chemical and licensed also where the chemical's kept. And DATCAP does the audits on these places and the bookwork, not only bookwork, but come and look to see how it's operated. Some things to keep in mind is, so chemicals are dangerous. They're like gasoline. But if you handle them properly, you can make them less dangerous. And so it comes down to really the operator, and especially as far as employees, the PPE that you're using.
Mhm.
If you operate this plan here according to the regulations, I think it's a pretty good thing that we could have here.
So it sounds like you've got your work cut out for you. The licensing and the specialization, is that something that you're going to take on, or is that an employee that would be that person?
I would license myself to do all that.
And it also would, the certification, whoever's actually doing the mixing of the product, you'd have to be certified, and I believe it's every 5 years they make you recertify. There is a bit to it.
Mhm.
So yeah, you
I
got
think
your
it
work cut
might
out.
be even more often than every 5. I think it's maybe every 2 years you have to get relicensed. It's pretty stringent. I know that.
And maybe even what Pat mentioned there, as far as I checked into this chemical a little also, when it's wet, and if it gets rained on, it can get out of the wood and get on the soil.
Mhm.
But if it's kept some kind of a cover over it till it dries, it's much better.
Mhm.
And of course, chemicals, they're at their dangerous point actually when you're mixing, because that's when they're almost in their pure form.
Mhm.
Once they're mixed, of course, and the dilution makes them so much safer then.
Mhm.
So you're gonna slash the logs, so you got a pretty clean log. But as you put logs into this container and then you pressure treat them, does that solution get, kind of like, I'm thinking the dishwater here, that after a while, it gets sort of dirty and crud floating around in there, and you somehow need to filter out the crud that's getting accumulated in there? And if so, what do you do with that then? How do you dispose of it?
That's right. It does. So I peel the post with a peeler, and so there ends up being little small chips and so forth. And as I understand it, with time, that can build up a little in your chamber, and then that has to get scraped up, and you have to go to, like, I haven't checked in, but it has to go to chemical waste disposal or something. There's places to dispose of chemical, and that's where that would have to go.
But the slash from peeling it could go to the power plant here.
Oh yeah, it gets peeled. A lot of that happens before the treating.
Yeah,
So, the cleaner you can keep it, the less of those sawdust and so forth you're gonna have to dispose of. And it's over time, just the little pieces, they add up, and then you have to do something with them.
how energy intensive is this business?
Well, the peeler itself is about a 40 horse motor on it. The pressure treater itself, the one there's a used one I have interest in purchasing that, and I believe has a 20 horse pump,
Okay,
and that's about all.
okay, so not much, from an electricity standpoint, not a huge amount then.
I don't think it's a huge amount. There's the one big pump. Of course, there's a hydraulic cylinder for closing the door, so that's going to be a little motor of some sort. But as I understand it, it's not. And then you would have your forklifts,
Mhm.
but that's
Okay.
fuel. So
How about your water supply, Paul? Do you know how much water you will be using?
I don't know yet at this point, but it does take a significant amount. I mean, I think the pressure chamber holds 10,000 gallons or something. I think it's 32 foot long and 5 foot in diameter. But so once you get that full, then it's just and then you put a charge of posts in, the amount of water you have to add is only what soaks into the posts. Because you cycle it to your holding tank and then into your pressure chamber, back to the holding tank. And so the only amount that's being used up is the little bit that soaks into the post, which, it's not going to be that much. But I don't know exactly how much usage it's going to actually be.
Well, again, I think in hearing all this, it sounds like you've done quite a bit of homework to get to this point. As Pat mentioned, the economic development side is something our county's been focused on. With Bruce, I think working closely with him and continuing to stay close to him as far as what you need to do at the county and ensuring. But no, I appreciate you coming in today. Does anyone else have questions before we let Pablo go. Yeah.
Just quickly, do you say an operation in Michigan somewhere, and where would that be?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did somebody mention that you had something going on over in Michigan currently? And if so, where would that be?
So I'm currently peeling posts, but I take them to Michigan. There's a treating plant out there 4 hours away. So I haul them the whole way out there to treat them, but that's not my facility.
So that's over near Marquette maybe or something?
It's Kearney, Michigan, right on Highway 45, I believe it is. It's just, if you go down to Phillips and then head straight east, you go into Michigan about 10 miles, I think it is, on Highway, well, it's not Highway 8 in Michigan, but Highway 8 goes, and then it's Kearney, Michigan.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. 5B, permits issued revenue account, December 2025. Looks like the Camp Coyote Hills filled us up.
Yeah, that looks a little larger than normal for that month because of Coyote Hills. What you see there is there's 10 cabins. So he paid for structure or dwelling permits for 10 cabins. And I believe them are being built at Eli's Sheds there just south of Marengo. So they're not on the site yet. And then also, so you can see that's the total for the month of December. And I think Krish has a printout here of just the last 5 years. So if you want to look at from 2020 to 2025, of course, that COVID time in 2021 was way high with our permits. Otherwise, it's pretty much right on track. We're a little bit lower in 25 than 24. As far as permits issued, we can see the fees collected are a little higher. And that's all I had for that.
Pat?
So on that sheet, it says these things are cabins, cabin 1 through 10 there. Is cabin defined as a structure attached to the ground? Can it be a mobile home? Could it be a camper? Or I'm thinking septic system here, because I believe the septic systems where they're plumbed, you can either do something that's an actual building, it's plumbed one way, but if you want to clean out for a camper, it's plumbed differently coming up. And you can't, at least in Bayfield County, you can't have both, I asked. So are these actual buildings or these campers, sites for campers?
We put them all as buildings, as dwellings, because they are going to be set right on the ground. They're all plumbed in just like a house. They're right to a holding tank. And I got the plans actually down, the campground plans in the zoning office, but they have them all like daisy chained in a row. So every cabin ties into that main line and it goes into a
They're
holding
putting
tank.
actual cabins there.
Yep.
So what happens if down the road a bit, things change and it becomes a campground? Does something have to change? Do they have to reapply?
No, this is part of the campground. It's part of the plan. Yeah, this is part of the approved
So it'll
campground
serve
plan.
either way?
Hmm?
It'll serve a building and then later if someone wants to have a campground there with campers
No,
coming?
no, no, these are rental, like
Well,
at the KOA campground.
oh, well, let me backtrack then, because I was thinking that this was in case they do the pipeline.
Oh, no, 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 no.
That's a separate.
No, this is part of that campground in Marengo. So he's got state approved plans for a campground and most of it is set up for RVs. But also in the back, he has one line left where he can put 10 of these
Okay, so
mini homes.
this is just actual cabins, the other.
Yeah, they're little
separate.
cabins. Yep.
Okay.
just little one-room cabins.
But what I brought up in the beginning is that if you drive down there, there's now massive 3 buildings and they're all brand new. And then there's these 10 cabins that are all gonna go on probably this year when Eli's done with them. But that's gonna significantly change the value of that property. And that needs to be reassessed quickly to get commercial. And the reason why they're gonna make all this money on this Line 5 reroute, we need to go and make sure we're doing our jobs as county, zoning. Because they just changed it without telling us. Now Bruce is involved, he's got the plans, but the state allowed this. They didn't really have to go through Ashland County. And that's okay, but we should be compensated for the tax change base, right? And when does that happen, Dan?
Well, the assessor, it's ongoing, but we'll get the full tax base a year after construction.
Well, good job making some money, right? Charging fees. Okay, we'll move along then to 5C, Ashland County zoning fee schedule update. We've just,
Okay, I think it was asked one of our last meetings about bringing the fee schedule in and updating it. So I kind of went through it to see where we're at according to the other surrounding counties. And we only have 3 of them that I see that were a little less than the others. So let's see, the 4th one down is accessory structure. And that one right now, we're charging $75. The average is $150 when I look at the other counties. And further down, the sanitary permit, we're at $450 for mound systems and pressurized systems. The average is $475. And right below that, we see there's 3 that the renewal of sanitary, the sanitary reconnect, and the transfer of sanitary permits. The average is $150, but the other counties, they tie them all into one permit. They have them all worded as under one permit, and it's $150. So ours is, we see the top 2 there are 150, but the third one, the transfer is 125. So we're not far off on it. But we could, if we want to do like others, we could combine them 3 into 1 and up it to 150. And then the only other one is the boathouse. We're charging $100. The other counties are charging $300, but we haven't give out a boathouse permit, not since I've been here. But that's how low we are on that one. And I know the 911. Tricia, was there some question from Brittany on that? Is Brittany on here?
Yes, she is. And I did pull up the 911 address application types and the current fees. So Brittany, if you want to go ahead.
Hey guys, so over the last, I think 5 years, I've been taking care of the addressing, which is what we've kind of called the address coordination. And so originally, 6 years ago, we only had one application, which is your standard top one there. But we have different circumstances, like if it's non-taxable land towards the reservation, or if someone needs a new sign. So we've been building a lot of new applications, and I just want to make sure that we get this reflected on the new fee schedule for zoning. So I think it's just kind of something we didn't think about at the time. But this is what you're seeing on the screen is what we're currently charging for those applications.
does it seem like none of them are the same?
That is correct. So your first line there is someone who needs an address on taxable county land. We go out, we collect a GPS point, that gets sent to me. I Carisha collects the fees and does the paperwork side of it. Then I assign the address, and then there's a sign ordered and a post. We have to order posts every once in a while. And then Matt goes out and installs all that. So the fee covers the 3 departments doing all of that work. And so if you go down to the next line, the non-taxable lands, we do half of that. And then once the sign comes in, the Bad River roads department comes, collects the sign, and they install it. So it's a little bit less on our, we don't have the gas to go out there and install it and such. And then, of course, if you just need a replacement sign or post, that is a little bit less because I don't have to do the computer work. There's less front end work on that. And then the final one is a private road name. And there is almost as much work as the signing an address. You got to go collect the road line, get that in the computer, get it digitized and in the GIS, and then assign address ranges to it and so forth. So that's why you're seeing so many different things there.
Could we combine the 3 and 4 and then have the private road name application the same as the 911 so that we charge $250 for the last one and then we charge 100 for 3 and 4 so that it's just a little bit, because otherwise you have 5 different. I get the second one that the Bad River is going to pick up the sign and put it on, so fine, we'll take $100 off. But the other ones, the 3 and 4 are basically the same.
So 3 is if you have an existing 911 sign on your property and it's faded or it's accidentally hit by the plow. So 3 is specifically just a sign replacement or just a new post. The sign is fine. And then 4 is if you need a brand new sign and a post with your already existing property. So there's less work because we don't have to go collect a GPS point. We don't have to do the GIS manually assigning an address. I don't do anything on those replacement signs and apps, signs and posts. So that's why they're much less,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Brittany, what are you suggesting here that we change on that?
Was that a question towards me? Sorry.
Yeah, for Brittany there. This is Bruce. I was just trying to understand what are your suggestions? Should we change or to make it easier or what is your thought on this?
I personally don't want to see an increase on the standard application. I hear almost every time I talk to somebody, they say, wow, that's high. So I don't want to see an increase just for the applicants that I've spoke to. I am just looking that the fee schedule contains all 5 of these fees that we are currently charging our residents.
Okay, I understand because we show right now on our fee schedule just the $250 911 address fee. So you're saying to add the rest of them onto our fee schedule?
Yes, that's what I would like to see.
So, go ahead.
This is Carisha. I just wanted to also add, I'm the one that receives all of the applications, and I agree with Brittany. We receive a lot of complaints on the fees, and I've also been asked if they have a faded sign, because it's not their fault, they want to run it through the sheriff's department to see if the fee can be waived. They want to see if they can install it themselves, and so that way the fee can decrease. There's just been a lot of complaints with the fees, so I would agree not to increase.
Pat.
This is Pat. On the sign itself, I've taken those off And they're like, I think 7/16 nuts. You get a couple of wrenches, 7/16 or half inch, it's no big deal. On and off easy. So if a homeowner or landowner is gonna replace the actual sign, if the county can give them the sign and they want to change it out, that's easy and no big deal. If a post needs replacing, and I've pulled out those posts because we had 2 addresses at the farm and there's only used one now. So those posts are driven down, but I pulled those at the loader bucket. I can do that, but I can also drive posts with a pile driver because I got one. But if there's a post that's damaged, does the county take out the old posts? Because some of those are hard to get at. They're down a ways. Because if you need a new post, are you leaving the old one? Are they steel or are they wood? I assume steel.
They are steel posts, and I believe Matt pulls them out.
Yeah. I
Matt
believe
with
so, too.
Highway.
So if you're having highway, especially replacing a post, you gotta pull the old one to clean the place up, shouldn't leave the old post there. When I think about our wage scale and I think about mileage, kind of averaging it out through the county, we've got some expenses in having highway go down there and do this work. I could see a fee where if you hand the landowner the new sign and they replace it, that's easy to do. I could see just whatever the cost of that sign is and not much more. But if we have to send the highway department down there for work, I think the fee should reflect that. And I'm not sure these are sufficient.
So Pat, I would argue that landowners are not supposed to touch the signs because they are for 911 response. And so 911 responders are trained and looking in a certain location for these signs and posts. And so we do not want our residents tampering with the signs or posts at all.
I think that makes sense. So I just want to go, there's a highlighted number that's $200, the private road name application. And it sounds like you don't want to make any recommendations to change any of those numbers. Is that correct? Just getting them included into the fee schedule?
Thanks for bringing that up, Blake. The 200 is the overall fee that we have listed on the application. However, it's broken out to $50 is required. Of that $200, $50 is required to go to the municipality that it's located in because they are the ones that will order the private road name sign to match the rest of the town's fonts and colors and whatever. So the private road name application specifically states that they will have to do maintenance. It does, if they get approved, they have to do their own road maintenance and own their own snow plowing. However, the town will purchase the sign so that it's the same across the entire town. And so I wasn't sure if the Ashland County fee schedule should have the $200 since 50 of that goes to the town that they're located in.
This is Pat. If someone gets a private road sign, does that then end up on all these GPS maps and all of that sort of stuff or not?
That would depend on who. So I've tried to reach out to Google to share Ashland County's authoritative road data. They don't want it. They want to purchase it from a company called Up or something like that. And so Up has reached out to me twice, I would say every 4 years, to gather new information. And I can't confirm or deny whether they're putting those private roads on Google or not.
From an emergency services standpoint, we've got fire numbers for good reason. But if someone says, I live on such and such road and it's not in the EMS system,
Oh.
then what?
So I work very closely with our dispatch center and our sheriff's department. And so as soon as I add a new road, I think legally I have 3 days to update the PSAP, the dispatch center, and then the sheriff's map as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
In going through the fee schedule, I feel like we're right in the ballpark of where we need to be because we don't issue new boathouses. I don't think we need to change that. I think we need to add all of the things that Brittany brought up and put those on the fee schedule just so they're all included. And I'm okay with not charging that $50 if the local township is going to be doing that. So that $200 it's fine. Thank you for bringing that, Bruce. I know we've chatted about going through that, but I think annually it's a good idea to do this. Pat?
Bruce, one more thing. For people that need a septic system pump, we charge a fee for that now, have for a few years, and it helps with record keeping. What are we at with that, and when was it last changed?
When that started as a $8 POTS fee, that's still the same. And that $8, the way I understand, was for the maintenance, time that goes into the maintenance, like our new, it used to be Catalyst, and now I don't even remember the name of the new system, but that's the way I understand what that money was for.
Right, and is that $8 covering costs like we anticipated? I was on my first term, 20 to 21.
I guess I don't know
Yeah,
much, really, how much time is put into it. Once it's entered in there, I don't see that it's costing any more.
okay, so the $8 is sufficient, you think, at this point?
I think so.
Okay.
If anyone doesn't have any more comments around the fee schedule, we can move along. It looks like next up is the 5D Mellon Area Campground discussion.
Okay, that's another one I can give you a little bit of info on there. So I had a call from a fellow that was interested in buying land, and it would be south of Mellon, and it would be just north of Cayuga. And he's intending to make a campground. And the reason why I wanted to bring this forward was because with the Marengo campground, some suggested that we should talk about these things before they come in. Now, this fella, he's out of Minneapolis. Before he buys it, he wanted to make sure that we are not going to be against him developing this land. And I believe it's a 40-acre parcel that the Bad River runs through it. And I mentioned to him, there's small parts of it that are in the floodplain, and there's smaller yet parcel that's in wetlands that he would have to deal with the DNR on them. And there's lots of rules with the floodplain as far as what they have to do also. They can build in the floodplain, but they have to have lots of regulations as far as emergency stuff. Even the sanitary system all has to be brought up above floodplain elevation. So we've been talking about this, and he said his initial plan is to do 40 sites, a combination of tents, tenting campground, and RVs. Probably more leaning towards RVs. And also he thought of just like what we've seen in the Marengo campground, he is wanting to put up some kind of buildings for amenities or toiletries, things like that. So I just told him I'm going to bring it to the in front of the board to make sure that there would be no issues before he goes forward with it. Of course, we don't have no plan yet. It all has to be approved by the state. But if there's anything anyone has questions about, I guess I could bring it back to him and just so he's aware.
So is this a byproduct as well of the Line 5 reroute, but kind of?
No, no, he didn't know anything about that.
Okay.
No, this was completely, he's looking at investing in this area.
And he knows that there's a Marengo campground that
I told him that, he didn't know that, but I
'Cause-
told him the one just went up.
there's a saturation level too of these units, and they're not all that far away, but as long as he's aware of,
Yeah, yeah, he wasn't, but he is now. His thought to that was that he wants to make his campground more of a high-end campground, with walking trails, and the railroad tracks goes through there. I guess there's some kind of a trestle or bridge. And he's talking with the road to see if they would allow him to do stuff around there. Anyway, it's completely in just talk stage right now. Nothing's going ahead with it.
Yeah, this is George Busse. I just like to throw in that it just seems really foresightful and really appropriate because up in Bayfield County, there's been significant community pushback when certain campgrounds been proposed, and then it should have been thought of way in advance. This sounds really good.
How far off of any trails like snowmobile trails or, other things where people can access those with snowmobiles, UTVs, cross-country skiing or anything? How far is he off of those sorts of trails? I mean, is there anything even near remotely close to the campground that people could then get on one of those UTVs and get on a trail to ride?
I don't know that area. Do you know, Gary?
I believe the snowmobile trail connects right into Cayuga because I think you can go to the bar there
Yes, it does.
off the trails.
I don't know if there's anything besides the snowmobile trail, is there?
No, but all the town roads in Gordon are UTV
Okay, yep.
authorized, so.
Yeah, so that would be good to share with him is there's a map with the UTV authorized roads and where he is in proximity to them because, all things being equal, a lot of those people are gonna bring those things up and they're gonna wanna ride. And if they're on a road where they can access a wider network of those, that's better than if they're crossing places that they don't have permission. But then the Bad River runs through there. Is any of that river frontage owned by a different party other than this party with the 40 acres?
It's a dead end road. Do you know the road I'm talking about, Gary? I think is it called River Road?
The one right out of Cayuga there, right?
Yep, I think it goes
Correct.
northwest out of Cayuga.
Yeah, it's dead end road up
And I believe there's one home on that road.
Yeah,
I was looking on the map and I seen there was one home, which I don't know if that fellow will be too happy about it, but because the 40 is beyond that one home, so there would be significant traffic coming through there. But the 40, it's a private 40 that he's looking at buying there. And yeah, the river runs right through it.
I think that private home might be the owner of the bar, so I probably he would
Oh.
squawk much.
Yeah,
I'm looking-
he would probably like this then.
I'm
Yeah.
looking it up right now to see.
Okay.
so it doesn't sound like at this point we're providing any,
He-
it's just more informational.
Yeah, informational, and he asked, would there be any kickback from the county if he wanted to develop this? So I told him, well, I'll bring this up front. Mainly, my main concern was that he understood he was in some floodplains there, that he will have to deal with the state on that.
I hesitate to hear the word kickback. We don't kick back anything. We often, as a
I
county,
agree.
struggle to come up with ways to
Yep.
invest in. Now, would we want to talk to him about that? Yes, but I don't know that we're able to kick back per se anything. We just don't have the tax credits or the ability to invest in small businesses. So unless Dan has an idea.
No, and also, I mean, it's the DSPS that issues the permit too, so it's like the other campground, we really don't have much say in it. This, we brought this up just so, you guys wouldn't be surprised at yet another campground.
Well, I do think it does bring up the fact, and this is an economic development discussion, is what are some things that a county could provide for a potential investor in this type of campground? And if the answer is none, then we just tell them that. But, I think we have to decide, is there anything a county could do to support this?
With that being said, he did mention about the railroad, if we knew anything as far as that could become some kind of an access point at someday. But I did tell him that I've checked with the railroad on this before, maybe that was probably 2 years ago, and they have no intention of selling their property or give easements or anything. Basically, they're just sitting on it. So I mentioned that to him, that don't bank on using the road.
Thanks for bringing that up, Pat.
So, yeah, I'm glad that people are coming to us sooner than later and having these conversations, because hopefully it all works out better. And part of that is, a guy in this case, if he understands the 40 and the considerations with that, like, is it on a UTV route or not? All of those things can help him make a better business decision versus otherwise. Because one of the things I think about sometimes when people do stuff, the legacy costs. What if they abandon it? So, well, that idea of a campground didn't work out. Now I've done something to the land. Am I going to restore the land? And a lot of times people walk away. And farming is one of the biggest culprits of walking away from the legacy of concrete for barns and silos and everything else. There's a lot of that. And so there's legacy consideration. So talking on the front end should hopefully help him make a better business decision, know what he's getting into, and feel more welcome than otherwise. But it also reduces the risk of legacy costs for projects that fail. So, which sometimes is no small matter.
All right, well, it looks like we've chatted that up. I think we can move along to the 5E zoning regarding potential solar farms discussion. And I owe Pat some time on this because he's emailed me a couple times and I haven't had a chance to follow up, so Pat, go ahead.
So about the third week of December, I get this large envelope in the mail. And I've got 210 acres, a bunch of it's farmland. And they're offering me $800 an acre per year with annual increases for inflation, if I'm interested in a solar farm. $800 an acre at first, I'm like, wow, that's a lot, because it's like 32 times the rent I get each year. So there's going to be people in my neck of the woods if they get the same offer, and I assume they will. I think some are going to be interested. So doing some homework, solar farms are generally located near high voltage power lines. I've got one post of the high voltage power line that runs across the very northwest corner of my property where fields are. They also like to be near substations, and there's a substation on Highway E immediately south of White River Ag, and I rent to White River Ag, so they're like 1.5 miles as a crow flies from me. And there's lots of farmland out there. So as I read about desirable sites, that neck of the woods is desirable. In fact, if I do the aerial view going up and down that power line going south, there's all those trees in the Schwamigan forest, not much farmland. They like farmland versus woods because, well, it's open. And you go east and west, and boy, if I were picking a spot, I'd be out, in that neck of the woods or some places around here. The same day, Wisconsin Public Radio had a story online about power plant legacy costs in Wisconsin. $1 billion. These are plants that are no longer operating and producing energy, but when the owners built them, they were guaranteed a rate of return for a period of time, whether those plants operate or not. So ratepayers, that's us, are on the hook for $1 billion collectively in Wisconsin. At the same time, the proposed natural gas power plant in Superior effectively is dead because in northern Minnesota, a company that was going to buy power from them said we're going to look elsewhere. So to permit a large plant is a long process, in part because you have to plan what is the demand going to be, going forward and get rate approval. It's a hard thing with data centers these days. So it turns out solar farms can be really attractive because you can plunk those down in places where you have demand, minimizing the need to add transmission lines. And you don't have this long permitting process with bigger plants. So the more I read on this, the more I'm like, no wonder why there's so many solar farms popping up in this country. In fact, if you Google solar farms Wisconsin, there's a site where you can get updates on everywhere they're the bigger ones that are built. So it's not going to surprise me if we have solar farms up here. So it's just a question to, this committee and zoning. Is there anything that we want to look at on zoning related to solar farms? Ideally, they get situated on, unproductive farmland and, places where it's not going to be, where people would perceive it to be an eyesore, those sort of things. I don't know what latitude we have on zoning, for setbacks or locations or anything else, but we shouldn't be surprised if we're going to get them. And then it'd be nice to have a discussion sooner or later to minimize that. And then I also think about Excel here again. I've thought about this for years, as Dan knows. We own some acreage there. Excel is right there. And it turns out to put in a solar farm and connect to your utility, you have to work with them. There's rules on this. But if we work with Excel, I would want to know, is there any reason if we have an interest in a company that wants to put in a solar farm, and we've got locals that could do it, that we couldn't put solar in there and add capacity to help fill that gap that's, going to be left by that plant not being built in Superior. So there could be an economic development opportunity there too. The alternative seems to be we wait for one of these outside companies to come in. They build the plant, the solar farm, and they typically leave it with the local utility and ratepayers for maintenance and upkeep and all of that. And then in Wisconsin, hopefully this doesn't pass, but they want to allow these companies to put in the solar farm, get their guaranteed rate of return for a period of time, and walk away from responsibilities for it. And that rate's higher than we are currently paying, and it would increase our average utility bill by $7 a month. So why would we let an outsider come in, take our money, and leave our rates higher? So I thought it was time we start talking.
So George Busset, the primary reason I came today, because this is on the agenda and my assignment for the comprehensive plan is utilities. So solar was discussed in some really insightful seminars down at the county's conference this past fall. And the advice of the attorneys who ran those seminars was really that you need to get ahead of the curve, because local control really doesn't exist when it comes to these power-related utilities. And this is, somewhat controversial downstate, where there are, Xcel is replacing a retired, I think, coal burning plant down near St. Croix, replacing it with a very large solar field. Some of these solar fields are measured in square miles, not in acres. So there are pros and cons. But the very strong advice was get ahead of the curve, decide what you want in your community and what you don't want. And we can put that kind of thing in a resolution, even though the county doesn't really control this issue. It's really a Public Service Commission issue. We can get ahead of the curve, work with a potential power company, like work with Xcel, and do something that is agreeable both to the local community and to the utility. And this applies to most utility type situations, like data centers will be an important thing coming up, whether we even can get a data center here or not. So that was my first point. We need to get ahead of the curve, and we need to really look at the objective pros and cons, whether these things are good for our community or not good for our community, and what people think. One thing that occurs to me has to do with tax base. There are types of development that come in and they add to the tax base, but they also add to the load on our infrastructure and increase cost for the community. And there are other types of investments that come in and add to the tax base and add very little cost. They don't add families and children to the school system. They don't add demands on our roads and utilities and our sewers. And those are really favorable for budget. So something like a solar field, I don't really know what the tax implications are of converting farmland to a solar field, but I imagine they're favorable to the budget. And it adds almost nothing to the cost bearance on the community's infrastructure. Same thing might go for a data center if we could even get a data center up here, because I'm not sure we're an appropriate location. These things, if they're done really well, could really be favorable for the community. A couple other things I wanted to say about solar. We really do need to look at the pros and cons. To me, there's a question of landowner freedom of choice. I think folks up here really rebel when they're told that they can and cannot do with their land. And we have to do some of that, but maybe not too much. Some folks, even in talking with staff down in Madison, I've heard speculation about soil pollution from a solar field. But I don't understand that because I've had it for years, and it's just a glass sheet. I don't know how it pollutes the soil with the rain running off. There's agriculture co-production. That's probably something we might really be in favor of when you can do solar and do agriculture at the same time. There's a lot of this being developed. There's a question of whether it's cost competitive and whether it's even a good investment. There's the issue of local energy self-sufficiency. The more that we don't have to import our energy, the more we're self-sufficient and the less cash drain we have in our economy. So just a few things I wanted to add to the discussion. Thanks.
So the first thing you said is you have to be with a partner that's your electric provider. So Xcel has to be willing to partner with the county, the city of Ashland, the landowner, and really that's where we start in my mind. I think we have to identify Xcel's going to be here a long time. Right now they're burning rubber, they're burning trees, they're calling it green. I know right now that's not a green source of energy because of the rubber burning, because of the stuff that they're polluting. So ultimately, is it possible to bring Xcel to the table and say, hey, we as a county would like to do some research on a solar farm where we're partnered with you, because you're also going to need to have some capital. Xcel's not going to want to just dump a bunch of capital into a solar farm, right? And so these are all the discussions, but Xcel is really the driver of this discussion, in my mind, with us. Dan?
As you can say, Xcel doesn't burn rubber anymore.
They're not burning
No.
rubber?
No, they're not burning rubber, just wood.
Because I thought the temperature wasn't high enough where they had to add the rubber
Yeah,
pellets to
They
get
were, and then they stopped doing it because it was too much problem to clean up or something.
it. Okay.
There's also Bayfield Electric too.
Okay, this is George. From my limited discussions with contacts with Xcel, it's my impression they'd be very favorable to solar development. That's what they're doing downstate to replace a legacy coal-fired plant. And it's also my understanding that the wood-fired plant here in Ashland will probably have to be replaced, or something will have to be done about it in the early 2030s. So that will be coming up on their agenda. They're already installing large solar, which is causing some controversy downstate because some people don't like burning farmland to solar fields. But solar combined with the increasingly effective technology of large battery storage is possibly a very cost-effective solution for them. My guess is they'd be very willing to work with us if we simply want to get ahead of the curve, and we don't really have a say other than just wanting to have them be good neighbors. If we can get ahead of the curve and let them know what we'd like up here, that will help us have the ultimately have the most favorable solution. Because we don't, as I understand it, we locally don't have really any zoning prerogatives in this dimension.
So, you mentioned Xcel. So one of the articles I read talks about our power system in the US. You go back historically, power companies started in different places and we've got what we see today, long story short. But what it leaves is Xcel's got property all the way up here, all the way down to Texas. What a hodgepodge. And then there's companies that are just in the business of transmitting power from different places, trying to balance the load through seasons, et cetera. So one of the advantages of solar farms where you need them is there's less need to put in bigger transmission lines or newer transmission lines, you know, cutting through somebody's woods and fields. And, you know, I look at one out where I'm at, and boy, it'd be nice if it wasn't there, but I also understand it has to be somewhere. You know, I accept that. And the same will be true of solar farms, wherever they end up, almost for sure, from what I'm reading, we're going to end up with them. So George mentioned battery storage. George and I both filled out a survey on battery storage up here. Another article I read is that until a few years ago, we thought this country was going to have a lot more electric vehicles. Now, with what we have in Washington, there's a push to keep gas cars and more of them longer. So when you read the data on prospective electric vehicle demand, it has implications for car companies that literally put billions into plants to make batteries for cars, and they're not like, now what? Because the demand isn't there. So they're spending a few more billion to do conversions to make batteries for storage for things like solar, because they see a demand for that. So like the AI data centers, you know, some of them, like I can put in a bunch of solar, but I need power at night. So battery storage for them. Homeowners that want solar, they're buying them, or people in hurricane areas. So this battery technology for storage, both in terms of quality and price point, is getting more attractive too, all of which means, you know, the whole idea of solar farms, you know, we're getting closer to that point. What I would like to do, because you can't just put in a solar farm and tell your local company, Excel, hey, we're going to connect to the grid. It's not that simple. And so I think Excel is central to the discussion up here no matter what. What I would like to do is ask Excel if they could have a rep come to a meeting or join us online through Zoom who has the background in solar farms and the process to get permits and connected, and tell us also, would they be interested in if a company was interested in expanding the solar farm where they are in Ashland on the county land, because we have local businesses that could do that, to have that conversation, because that whole thing with Excel is so critical to this. And then we could go from there. And then hopefully, as George says, stay a bit ahead of this to make it work as well as possible for as many as possible.
So I totally agree with you. I think our next meeting, we need to invite Excel, the spokesman, if they're able to make it, and then have them, because like you said, we have some land right next to where there's already a solar farm, right next to the Excel property, and that's really situated well. So if Excel could give us maybe some hints on next steps for us as a county, as a body, that we could kind of say, okay, here's how we attack this nut, right? We're going to have to do this. We're going to have to do this. Where we are, I'm not so concerned about, I know you're going to have some people complain no matter what, because we live with a bunch of people that are going to complain no matter what. That's just the way we are as humans. But we're very, very rural, right? So some of these properties that you're talking about where they're driving, there's not a lot of farm for sale. And so they're seeing these farmlands get gobbled up and used for solar, and it upsets them. But up here where we are, the quality of the farms, and some of them who've already been basically turned over, there's the availability here. And I think it's just really bringing Excel in to say, hey, how can we make something go like that? Do we need to find a bank financing? Do we need to find a developer? What is it, Excel? Help us with this. And then we can kind of attack that.
So these companies, and the one that sent me the information isn't the only one, and I assume they're building a database of potential sites and all this, but they do everything. You know, read the article and Google the name of that company, and they're not the only ones out there. This is a whole new industry, and not very many years, the last 10 and 15 years, they do everything. So they'll say, yep, I'll rent your farmland. I'm going to pay you what seems like ridiculous money. We will do the whole process of an installation. We will work with your local power company to deal with all the details of connecting to their grid, et cetera. They will do all of that. So I would assume this company, if they're interested in doing work up here, if we have an interest in that, we could do it with them, but better yet, work with a local company, because I think we could do that. And if we could ideally work with local landowners and local companies to make this work for us and keep that money here versus letting somebody else take it out, especially if our rates are going to be higher, under the proposed legislation in the Wisconsin legislature, which has failed twice and will hopefully fail 3 times, but you never know a year from now.
So I think next meeting, if we could, Dan, just make sure that we've at least reached out to Excel.
I'm doing that right now.
Thank you. George?
Yeah, so the contact for their public relations is Lynn Hall. And if you don't have that number, email Dan. You have that, okay. I have one other question on this topic as to whether we have any prerogatives in terms of zoning as a county when it comes to residential solar. Is there a permitting process that we are involved in when someone wants to put residential solar at their home, on their rooftop or in their yard or that kind of thing?
So we do, if in residential, they're allowed to put it in without a permit unless they are within the shoreline protection, then we give them a permit. Otherwise, they can put it on their rooftop or whatever without a permit. That's different if it's commercial, then there's a permit for commercial. And I believe it's $100 permit.
So that's a county permit when they do
Yeah.
commercial?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then another thing I was going to mention with that, I've been reading up with other counties have done for zoning. And some of them they call these solar fields, they call 10 acres or less or up to 20 acres as a small solar field. Anything 20 acres or larger is a large solar field. And then they set it up that you have to have a conditional use permit if you go 20 acres or bigger. And I suppose that's one way that has to come back to us and we would have a say-so in it. So that's what I'm seeing. 20 acres or larger, they're considered large. Same thing even with them data centers. They're putting a size limit on the building. If they go over 100,000 square feet for a data center, it's a conditional use permit. So I'm guessing that's how they're setting this up, just so they have some say-so. Dan?
And just with data centers, AB 840 is going to be on the assembly floor today. That requires that data centers pay for all utility charges. So your upgrades and lines and everything that costs to go with it don't get pushed to ratepayers. So they have to put money in for remediation, and a lot of our concerns are addressed by that bill.
One of the things that I found out when I started researching this is that our area doesn't have the necessary energy output. So Excel right now could not provide any data center. They just are way too short. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't, when they do that 2030s remodel of Excel, change their output. But at this point, we don't have the output to support a data center.
As you say, there's also a water issue too. We may not have enough water for them. Now, AB 840 does require a closed loop system to reduce water use. But we may not have anywhere outside the city that has enough water for a data center to use.
So on this subject, I was wondering about this because I was wondering about what do we need to have up here if we wanted to attract a data center in a constructive way. And I don't know if we have the right information distribution infrastructure in terms of fiber optic. I mean, a data center processes an incredible amount of information at rapid speeds. And I don't know what kind of communication infrastructure is needed for a facility of that nature. So if you're down around Stevens Point, maybe that works, but I don't know if we even have that up here. So I think we ought to find out what we would need to have if we wanted to attract a data center in a constructive way. Kind of off the subject of solar, but it's in there with utilities.
All right, well, I think we're moving on from the solar discussion to number 6A, property subject to tax deed, our favorite conversation.
I don't have anything new for today, which is shocking for me. We do have some properties that are eligible for foreclosure. I'm still kind of a mind to hold off for now until we get more of those other properties sold before we start foreclosing on stuff. But I would imagine at our next meeting in a month or so that we'd be ready to start foreclosures.
Can you just remind me? I think we've sold like 5 or 6 properties total. Can you remind me from when Tony started to like now how many you've sold?
I think it's a little more than 6, maybe 8 or so we've sold. I know I just got closing documents to sign just now, actually. So that'll be another one. Pretty much all of the structures that, homes we've taken within the city, and then the cabin down in town of Gordon have been sold. So we're pretty much just left with the vacant land at this point.
Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions around this? I know we talked a little bit about the realtor fee. We're going to try to clean that language up, but other than that, I think that's it.
I will add one other thing. There's a few properties that are not really gaining any interest and Tony believes it's because of their pricing. So we talked to Corp Counsel, who said the committee would be able to approve new listing prices at, a lower price. I don't have new prices yet from Tony, but I'll bug him to get those before the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think we should be flexible with Dan and yourself to adjust those based on Tony's type of, because if we can't sell them, they're clearly not overly marketable. So yeah, we
Right.
can wait to update the pricing, but our goal is to sell, I think. And so if you guys have the ability to adjust price with Tony, I would give you that authority if you're looking for that.
Okay. I will have to double check on the email we got from Corp Counsel. I believe she mentioned we should probably get a motion from the
Okay.
committee to do so, and I think I would be more comfortable with
That's
that
fine.
anyway.
It's no big deal. I don't want to wait for 2 months if we don't meet or whatever, if it's a simple just 2,000 or 5,000 reduction. So
Right,
yeah, if you get those and you can send them around, we'll do that at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Pat?
Jennifer, for clarification, when you said what you just said, were you considering a motion today to do that or waiting till the next meeting?
We'll have to wait till the next meeting. I didn't get an agenda item on time, and I haven't received updated amounts from Tony
Okay.
yet either, so.
All right.
And then just one thing from my own knowledge, the property, let's say we've, as a county, lost 10,000 in past due taxes and our expenses. The property's worth 5,000. So realistically, it's not ever going to recoup us what we all have. So we're going to kind of take a loss to sell it. Are we authorized to do those things? Can we take that loss up front and just be like, hey, we want to get out?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where the Supreme Court decision kind of hurts us. Because normally we could balance that off with ones where there are profits. And just while we're on that topic, there is a new case headed to the Supreme Court that could change how this whole thing works again. The justices are going to hear it in April.
Okay. Now, there were some liabilities that we had accepted because we have sold some properties, right? Historically, but now I think all that's kind of, I haven't heard any of those.
They kind of went away.
Okay.
So we're staying quiet
And that's fine.
hoping-
Keep our heads down, hope that they go away, that this time passes and everything heals itself. But those are some liabilities that we've got in the background that if they come up.
And we're not necessarily, if we do make a profit on a property, we do have to send the proceeds to the former owner, but if they come back to us and they're unclaimed within a year, then we do get to keep those. So,
So I mean, if do you send them a certified check? And then if that check doesn't get cash, you're saying you basically,
so we send it certified mail, and if it comes back to us, then it's unclaimed funds. We wait a year and then we're able to keep it. So we do have a a few, a few properties where, the owner has passed away and, there's nobody to
Yeah.
get that, so.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you for that. All right, anything else? It looks like everyone's good there. Mr. Ader says nope. We'll move to the number 7 land records. Ashland County Land Information Data say B.
All right, so thanks for pulling that up, Carisha. So in 2013, this was approved by the county board. In 2021, the Land Information Council, which is made up of mostly staff and one county board member, worked to update this. I had thought it got pushed to county board. This was back when Clark Schroeder was the county administrator. He was working on one master fee schedule for all of the departments. And so I think in that confusion, it just never got pushed forward. So right now on record, this 2013 fee schedule is what stands. So I do have the 2021 that was worked on by staff, which includes Register of Deeds, Jennifer here with us, zoning administrator at the time, treasurer. So I think moving forward, next land and zoning committee meeting, I will bring that to us with just some minor tweaks. I can kind of go over this one and just let you know what changed. So starting at the top, we'll keep the same 2 there for 65. The parcel maps will be excluded. We no longer manage our parcels on paper printout maps and how it used to be done. So we'll just nix that. As far as custom maps, we are going to do $30 an hour, $15 minimum. And then for the orthos, we are just going to nix that because it's provided online for free with the state of Wisconsin. If someone wants to bring in a hard drive, we're going to just transfer that for free. And then moving down to paper prints, we'll just kind of keep some of what we have here, but more align with prices with our surrounding counties. So we'll see some bumps more towards the 10 to 20 if it has imagery on it, which is essentially you're looking down at the trees and the grass and everything. So that's a lot on the printer. But most of that will stay, an 8.5 by 11 is going to stay relatively cheap for black and white. It's just with imagery that'll bump to like $7. And then that is pretty much everything. I'm going to plug our websites down at the bottom where they can download a tax parcel map off the web map or GIS data. So I'll plug in some links to that. Any questions on this one?
Somewhat related to it, when you pull up records like this and tax deeds and stuff, is there anywhere that any easements are recorded that the public would have access to online?
Oh, like some kind of visual thing on a map.
Well, like I'm thinking about Bruce and that campground, the railroads there. It'd be nice if the prospective owner could look at that and say, is there an easement that would give access to the railroad? Or if someone buys a 40 and they may not realize at first blush that, maybe the pipeline has an easement through there. They haven't built yet, but they have an easement, or a power line having an easement through there. Even Excel and Bayfield Electric, do they have easements to run things? Is any of that information available with what you're looking at here?
So currently easement data is not in GIS format. It is online on the Register of Deeds websites. And then if someone is buying a new property, if they're going through a title company, all of that information would be pulled by the title company. If they're buying independently, they would have to know to research on the Register of Deeds website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if I can just add, this is Jennifer, we just don't have the staff time available to be able to go and map easements too, so.
I agree to that.
All right.
Yeah, so I just really wanted to bring this forward so you guys could see what we have, and then at our next meeting, I will bring a revised, updated one.
Thank you. Pat, go ahead.
So Brittany, this is Pat. Printing is obviously expensive, especially with color, but what if someone wants a digital copy? You still have staff time involved, and then they can print it if they so choose on their end, but maybe all they want is digital. Are we gonna have a fee for just providing a digital copy?
Yep, so towards the top of this, kind of the third, I guess I would call it the third paragraph, custom maps is creation of digital maps upon request. And so if it's a 15-minute map, that's like going to the web map and
Okay.
printing what's already existing, it's free. If we have to build data, build a template, build the map, that's going to add up. And it has right now it's $10 for every 15 minutes after that first free 15. I want to bump it to $30 an hour with a $15 minimum on the map, unless it's under that. So the first 15 minutes will remain free,
Yeah,
but then if it's charged a
yeah.
minimum of $15.
I missed the digital when I first glanced through that. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, it looks like we've got that wrapped up. We're moving on to the 7B, Ashland County Survey Reviews Fee Schedule.
Okay, so this one has not been revised by staff since 2013. We kind of looked it over in 2021 and said it still stands well. I think I need to run this by our current county surveyor just to make sure he's okay with these fees. I did review it with Bayfield County's survey fee schedule, and it's pretty much the same. They have it broken out a little bit different based on their lots, but the fees are almost the same. I had one comment from Jennifer to add condominiums into the subdivision plat section there. So just a bit of a word change to clarify what we're calling a subdivision plat, or what we constitute in that category. So I will bring that to the next meeting as well.
This is Pat. I've had surveying done at the farm twice, and I've got certified maps. One of them is attached to the Bayfield County website. They plunk a symbol in the middle and you can pop up the map. So one, I don't understand why one is there but not the other. So I pay the surveyor, Nelson Surveying in this case, they do that. But are these fees for the county reviewing a certified map that a surveyor did, or are you guys actually doing surveying here?
So this is reviewing those maps that are submitted to make sure that they meet the requirements.
And then you plunk those into the GIS, so when I look
So
at Gary Eater's property, I can see he's got it surveyed.
So currently, we do not have certified survey maps in GIS format. It is a wish list item that we've all been working slowly towards for the last 5 years. On the county parcel viewer web map, we just published our section corners. So now we can at least see those in GIS format, and we are working towards the certified survey maps.
All right, thank you.
I will make a quick note if I can. If you're ever on the GIS website looking at a parcel, if you click on it, I will put a note in the abbreviated parcel description well, it'll say in there if there's a certified survey map, because that is the legal description, but I'll also put a note if there is a map of survey as well.
So it looks like we have finished that conversation. So now we will move to 8, schedule our next meeting date. And based on what I heard, it sounds like we might need to meet next month. Get these property changes and values updated for Realtor. So you guys want to look at February and the 17th? (9 a.m.) Well, we got Mr. Ader. He's good. No one's complaining on the other side of the table, so that looks good. So we'll keep it at February 17th, 9 a.m. And after that, we got number 9, which is the adjourning. And I know Mr. Ader is going to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Jim will second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, good meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.